Welcome back to the BookEnds YouTube channel. I'm James McGowan.
I'm Jessica Faust.
And today we have with us Pat McDonald from QueryTracker and QueryManager, our first guest in a while. So thanks for joining us, Pat.
Hi, Jessica. Hi, James. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, of course. Well, we are huge fans of both QueryTracker, but more specifically QueryManager. So it's really exciting to have you on here. And I know Jessica has strong feelings about both of them.
I do. Well, we have talked about QueryTracker about 1,000,000 times on the channel. So it's really fun to have you here to talk to authors about it in a way that we don't understand it because we don't use it in that way.
Well, I'm a big fan of your channel, so it's fun for me to be here too.
So BookEnds was one of the first agents on QueryManager, right?
Right, one of the very first.
This was a little before my time, so I had to make sure.
It was really fun when you came to us with the idea. I loved it because I thought managing queries via email was just a nightmare. And I offered it to my team and I said, let's try this. Let's give it 3 months. We'll do it a trial. If we decide after 3 months it's not working, we'll go back to the old way. And you were so great with working with us to redevelop things in a way that worked for us. And I don't even think we were like 3 weeks in when everybody was like, never going back. And I have raved about it every time I talk to an agent about what kind of systems we use. It's always on my top.
Well, your help in the beginning was a lot of help because you really helped shape it and transform it and make it work better for agents, because I had no idea what agents were really looking for.
So what came first, Pat? Did QueryTracker come before QueryManager?
Yeah, QueryTracker came first. Way back when I was a aspiring author and I was querying. And to date myself, this was way back when all you had was the book, Writer's Market.
Yes.
And yeah, and that was not fun to use.
No.
And a couple websites started popping up, but they were just kind of digital versions of Writer's Market.
Yeah.
So you still had to keep track of all your queries and everything separately, and then try and make everything mesh together. And one day I was struggling with that, thinking, God, it sure would be nice if I could just check a box on this website to mark that I've queried this agent. And I thought, wait a minute, I'm a programmer. I could do that, And so that's how QueryTracker started. QueryManager came on. I actually created QueryManager just a few years after that. Okay. Nobody wanted to use it.
That does not surprise me.
No, because this was like 2010.
Okay.
The agents just weren't ready for it. Nobody wanted it. So it sat for a while.
I mean, I've been around for a long time too, and I would say in 2010, there were probably still agencies who were really reluctant to go to email. That's right. I remember telling agents, and I don't remember what year it was, that we had completely switched over from snail mail to email only queries, and they were just horrified to think that they could manage that. It was, agents are slow.
But even today, there are a ton of agents that are reluctant to go from email to QueryManager to make that switch.
There's still some who use snail mail.
Oh, snail mail, I can't imagine.
Yeah.
Oh.
Just the cost alone of snail mail is awful.
So awful. Well, so we love QueryManager and we've bragged about it, but I don't know, James, am I stepping on your toes?
No, go ahead.
But I would love you explained why you started QueryManager, but I would love you to talk it through a little bit for the authors who haven't fully adopted it and what it offers for them and how they use it. I mean, what I notice about it from my side of things is the engagement, which I think is wonderful, that authors can give each other feedback on their experiences with other agents, which I think is probably one of the best things about it. But I'd love for you to talk more about how it works for authors.
Okay, well, there's QueryTracker and there's QueryManager, and they are separate. A lot of people kind of just use one term for them both, but they are separate. So QueryTracker is where authors go to find agents to query and then to track those queries to the agents.
Right.
And then QueryManager is what agents use to organize all the queries they receive.
Right.
Okay. So
and the two work together, right? On your end?
Somewhat.
Okay.
The idea for QueryManager was actually to try to keep it separate, because it didn't seem right to make authors have to join a site in order to query an agent.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Right? You don't want that barrier there, right?
Right.
So you can query an agent on QueryManager without ever having to touch QueryTracker.
Gotcha.
So they are separate, but then they do work together in some respects. On QueryTracker, you track when you sent a query, you mark the date, how you sent it, and then you track again when you get the reply back.
Mm-hmm.
And early on QueryManager, you had to manually track that query in QueryTracker as well,
Gotcha.
just to keep the data consistent, so everyone not using QueryManager would have the same quality of data upon those agents. And now you can automatically track a query on QueryTracker if it went through QueryManager, right? But only if you explicitly say, "Hey, I want to track this query."
Okay.
Because I don't want to get so much data on the QueryManager agents and have less data on the email agents,
Mm-hmm.
because it'll skew the data and things won't be apples to apples anymore.
Yeah.
So I'm still trying to keep it so you have to explicitly say, "I'm tracking this query to Jessica Faust in my QueryTracker,"
Right.
and then it'll automatically tracks it.
Although that might be a good pitch to get more agents on QueryManager.
So one of the parts that I love, and this is a lot like, authors shouldn't read their reviews, but one of the parts that I love about QueryTracker is that it's also a community forum in a way, right? Where authors, when they're tracking their queries and their responses, they're also able to track their experience and how it was to query that agent and what that was like. And it creates a good sense of community on there. But can you talk a bit about what made you do that and how that's been working so far?
Yeah, it's a good place if every agent has their own little comment section. So if I have an agent or a query out to you, I can go in the comment section and I can say, "Hey, what are other people's experiences with this agent?" And you can kind of share some experiences. And a lot of times people will actually post the rejection letter, so you can see all the rejection letters and find out if it's a form or they say that to everybody or stuff
Right.
like that.
And I think that's great because I think it helps. I hope it helps give some confidence to authors when they're querying that there's real information on this person, not just, what this person posted or, what they can find online. I think that real conversation is really helpful.
And it really helps alleviate the stress of, did my query even get through? Did you receive my query? Do I need to send it again? So QueryTracker and QueryManager helps with there. Yeah, did it go to the spam and it never got read? So you can see in the comments people saying, "Oh, I received an auto reply from this agent," even if they're just on email. I got an auto reply. If you didn't get that auto reply, now something may not be right here.
Wow. I hadn't thought of it that way. Yeah, that's very true. I hadn't thought of that knowledge of how the agent operates. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a good
We're
tool for so many different reasons. I think the tracking is obviously what so many authors need, especially when they're querying. But I think that it's become a fundamental part of agent research too, which it's kind of got a dual purpose to it. So
Yeah, I've noticed that when I go into QueryTracker that the community will update an agent's information or have you update it in there for them and just say, "Hey, I just saw this agent's closed to queries," or "This agent has changed their genres," and things like that. And I think that's fantastic because I've noticed my information in QueryTracker, other than our website, is the most up to date anywhere else on the internet.
It's hard to keep track of all that, keep up with it, but I try.
I don't know how you do it because I can't keep
Well,
track of my own information.
that's why QueryManager comes in really helpful there.
Yeah.
Because now you're updating QueryManager, and I know QueryManager is the most up to date because you're updating it yourself, and then I can take that information from there.
Yeah.
So more agents that use it, the easier my life is.
Yes, and the easier authors' lives are. So shout out agents. If you're not on QueryManager, we can't recommend it enough. And I have heard from authors that they also really love the ease of QueryManager. That
I've heard that too.
Yeah, that it makes submitting. Now I know when I was accepting email submissions, and even after we closed our email submissions and remained open, and were only open via QueryManager, how much ended up in spam that I never saw. And that does not happen with QueryManager.
Yeah, and they don't have to guess anymore what you're looking for in a query because it's right there in your form. All they have to do is fill out the form, and that gives you exactly what you want.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of trying to guess it and figure it out. What does this agent really want?
Totally.
Do you have any tips and tricks, Pat, on how authors can use both of them together and how they best, complement each other?
Well, like I said, they're mostly can be used separate, right? But like this just past summer, I think was when I added the linking between the two. So when you go to query an agent on QueryManager, there's a place at the bottom to supply your QueryTracker username and password, and that will then sync up that query to QueryTracker.
Nice.
And that's all there is to it.
Right, which makes tracking so much easier.
Yep.
So even when they get a pass, does it automatically link, or is that something that they then have to go in? Oh, wow.
Because once you've linked it, so then once you pass on a query or you request a submission, they'll get the email from QueryManager, and their QueryManager will update with that, but it'll also show up in QueryTracker.
Oh, wow. And then the authors can go in and add a comment or an experience if they wanted to.
Yep.
So it's super easy. It's almost no work to do.
Almost no work.
We love no work.
Well, then if you're querying, if all agents got on QueryManager, what would be great about that is you don't have those moments of, I don't remember if I heard back, and you're searching your email and you're trying to see if this agent got back to you. Like, it's all right there. And
it's all right there, yeah.
And the other thing is for authors frustrated with the no reply from agents and things like that, QueryManager is such an easy way for agents to manage their query inbox and be able to easily reply to everything. It's just as easy to send a response as it is to hit a delete button, which is one of the reasons we love it so much, because at BookEnds, we have a policy where we do reply to every query. And so to streamline it, to make things more efficient for us, allows us to do that.
Well, BookEnds is not sorry, go ahead, Pat.
No, I was going to point out that I've seen some talk out there that people suspect QueryManager will automatically reject queries. And I want to let everybody know that doesn't work that way. The agent still has to explicitly perform that action.
The thought of that stresses me out.
I know, but I get that one often. That it automatically rejected. Like, no, that was me. Sorry. So
well,
I appreciate the clarification.
Are there other myths about either QueryTracker or QueryManager that you've heard?
That's a good question.
I think that's the only one I can think of right now.
That's a big one. Yeah. No, it does not.
I'm glad you dispelled it. So, but one of the things I love about QueryManager is that BookEnds is not a fan of that. No response means no, and I love that it's been a huge driving point in almost eradicating that. Right, like it's so easy to send a rejection on there and give an author closure that it's more work to not send the rejection, right? Because then you got to click the archive button. And so like you're doing the same amount of work. So I love that it's had so many like beneficial byproducts just by making it easier for us. It's made it easier for authors. There's so many benefits to it.
It might get you more queries though, and I don't know if that's a good or a bad thing for you.
It has probably gotten us more queries.
I'm okay with
now,
that.
Because now you can look up on QueryTracker and look for the agents who respond more often.
Right.
And so you're probably going to get more queries because of that.
I've been in that top 10 before.
Yeah, you asked. Yeah.
I'll take them. I'll take the queries. I love that. I mean, we're looking for clients. So if we don't have the queries, we don't have the clients. So I'm happy with that. And it also has really easy things too, that we can forward the query to each other just within the agency. But don't assume we do that, authors, because that might throw you. You will know if that happens. We can track authors we've offered on. So I can go into the archive and look at every author I've ever offered on. And what's really fun too is I can find, sometimes if I see a deal or read a book and I think, gosh, that sounds familiar, I can go into QueryManager, into my archives, and say, oh yeah, that's why it sounds familiar. I actually saw that book, or or read it or something. So it's really great from the point of an agent for tracking authors and keeping an eye on people and watching their success.
And you just made me think of another myth too.
Oh.
A lot of authors ask me, if such and such an agent rejects me on QueryManager, are all the other agents going to know that?
Oh.
And no, that's not the case. The information is not shared unless all the agents are in the same agency. Then they can share information. But they're going to do that whether it was email or QueryManager or whatever. So.
Yeah, and to expand on that a little, yes, we can't see any of that. We can see what's within the agency, but BookEnds has a policy that you can query any agent at BookEnds, just not at the same time. And I cannot tell you the number of times that one agent has either passed on something to another agent who then offered representation, or has just passed on a book and the author went and created another agent who offered representation. Like, it's so subjective. So that's why we have that policy, because what might be not right for me might very well be right for somebody else. But we can also see that in QueryManager, and then we can have the conversation with somebody who already read it and say, hey, I saw you passed on it. Did you have any concerns I'm missing? Because I want to make an offer. So it allows a great conversation in the agency for us.
And on the flip side of that, we, at least on the kidlit side, we often get authors who will query more than one of us at a time, which is usually a no-no. So then I can see, oh, if Tracy has this, I shouldn't request it. Tracy's considering, and I can say, send it to me after Tracy responds or something like that.
Yeah.
So it takes all of the guesswork out of it on our end and on the author's end, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm.
But I have a question. I mean,
Yeah.
clearly we're super fans, right? But how have others responded? How do other agents like it? How can we get more agents to sign on? Are there more agents joining? How's it going on that front?
Well, I think Jessica's probably helped most with recruitment, because once she signed on and started spreading the word, a lot more
Very
agents signed
persuasive.
on. And I think there's about 600 agents using it now.
Oh,
wow.
awesome.
So
That's great.
It's crazy to think that there's more left.
yeah, there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a good
Pat,
chunk of them.
I was an embarrassment when we first got on QueryManager. I would be at conferences whipping out my phone going, no, you've got to see it. And I would show them everything. And by the time I was done, they were all like, I think I got to check this out. I
could always tell when you went. Yeah, I could always tell when you went to a conference, because I got all these agents joining right afterwards.
That's funny. Well, then authors
appreciate
should be doing the same with QueryManager. You need to get on there. Like, you need to have access to it and use it, because what QueryManager is to us, QueryTracker is to all of you. And I think if you're not using it, you're making your life more complicated. So,
speaking of complicated, are there any pain points that authors have or that bring up to you for the agents to know and for us at BookEnds to know? Are there any things about our forms or about the service in general that maybe drive authors a little crazy or is really difficult for them that we should be aware of?
There's a few things that I'd like to address on the forms that authors use. Some of them can be addressed. Some of them are just not going to be possible, like pasting in from Word into a web page. They use a completely different type of formatting, so you're not always going to get the formatting perfect. I've worked hard on it so it's close,
right?
But it's probably as close as it's ever going to get.
That makes sense.
And I think most of the agents realize that, and they're not going to get too upset over a little bit of formatting that's off. You know, and you probably don't even notice it's off.
No,
I don't know. You guys look at it all the time. Do you ever see anything that you just go, "Wow, what happened here"?
Every once in a while, but I don't think it's a cut and paste problem.
Yeah,
I don't know what happens there. But
yeah, that's that too.
But for the most part, I mean, I have it open right now, and no, it looks like. But I think the other thing is we don't read it like a letter, because it comes through as a form for us. So we don't have these expectations that it's going to be perfect in that same way either.
and formatting issues usually, we're reading sample pages. It's like, okay, I'm looking for the writing and the voice. I'm not really looking that your paragraphs are perfect and you use indentation. I'm not really looking for that. I can get that in the manuscript. So I think our expectations of the form are certainly different than for when we open the manuscript. If we open the manuscript and it's like that, that's for me an initial like, red flag. So, okay, that's good to know. Any others?
Good point. There are some more technically unsavvy people out there who have trouble with the form. They know how to send an email and attach a document to an email, but uploading the file is a problem.
Yeah.
So I need to come up with some ways to simplify that, make it easier for them. File size is a problem. We do limit the file to 2 megabytes in size, which should be plenty for an all text manuscript by far.
Yeah.
But then there's people trying to send a lot of big graphics as well, and that doesn't work.
Well, and I think honestly, the illustrators are able to submit to it typically, right? So I think
Yeah,
that-
James, you get a lot of picture books, right? So
Yeah, I usually ask folks to give a link though.
Okay.
So for anybody watching who's trying to upload big file sizes, consider a Dropbox or a Google Drive or a WeTransfer link of some sort. If it's not fitting, have that handy if it doesn't fit into QueryManager.
yeah, and what I tell them is give them 1 or 2 sample images,
Mhm.
and they'll request the rest some other way if they like it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
Most illustrators have a portfolio. It's the folks that you said
Yeah.
that are putting like highly graphic books in there, which I can
Yeah,
definitely
they,
see getting
they
different
made their own cover and they've
Right.
got that in there.
We don't
and
need
things
that
like that.
anyway, so just take that off.
Right,
Yeah.
Well, but the truth is we would have had the same problem with email.
right.
I mean, the files,
Except-
giant files would have been tricky in email too.
Yeah, except that those big files would have been marked as spam, and
was
you
just gonna
never
say
even
that.
would have known.
Yeah.
So
True.
at least this way
better
they know there's
check.
a problem and they can fix it.
Yeah. So what's next? Are there any updates that agents should know about, authors should know about, all of us should know about for the services?
I'm actually working on a completely fresh rewrite of QueryTracker.
Wow.
There's some new features I wanted to add, and it just seemed easier to rewrite it than to try and shoehorn it in.
Wow, that's exciting.
So I'm hoping that'll be done April or May.
Soon.
Great.
And then it might be time to rewrite QueryManager. So think about things you want to add. If we can come up with enough new things to add, it might be worth rewriting.
You asked the wrong 2 people.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure
You'll have emails in your inbox soon.
BookEnds, right now I can see them all going. I'm making a list.
Send it over.
So, well, any last things, any last suggestions for authors or agents?
No, just that like I am working on the new QueryTracker. So if anyone has any thoughts what could be added there, let me know. The 2 biggest things I'm adding that I get the most requests for is an indicator now. Whenever you query one agent at the same agency, you'll get an indicator that tells you, well, you've already queried somebody there.
Oh,
Right?
that's
So
smart.
that's been asked for a lot. And I'm refining all the genres. So right now, they're pretty general. You search for fantasy, you search for middle grade. And so I'm expanding all those. So you'll have fantasy, cozy, all the different genres under middle grade and under YA.
Well, that'll be helpful.
So that's taken a lot of work to go through and determine all that.
I'm sure.
You can really split hairs with those.
Yeah. Well, if you have any suggestions, authors, put them in the comments. We're not going to promise you Pat's going to do it all. But
Do what I can.
Right, exactly.
Okay, can we leave our subscribers and also other agents with a directive? So for authors, what is the subscription cost? How do they sign up? What do they have to do to get on QueryTracker? And for agents, the same question.
Okay. Well, for authors, QueryTracker.net, most of it is free.
It's linked below.
Okay. 85% of it's free. And then there's some advanced features for $25 a year. And then QueryManager is completely free. So, but to use QueryManager, you do have to be an established agent. I have to verify you're a real agent before I'll approve your account.
Which is good to know for authors, that if agents are using QueryManager, they've been vetted to a degree, that they're verified. So that's
there are some agents using QueryManager who do not qualify for listing on QueryTracker. QueryTracker, you have to be pretty well established, but on I'll let them use QueryManager as they're establishing themselves.
Oh, that's great.
And once they become established, then they can get a QueryTracker listing.
Oh, I love knowing that. Thank you.
Good to know. Yeah, I didn't know that myself.
That's great.
Well, this was wonderful. I hope for anybody who's not a subscriber of either of them, they are going to be now. I think this is all the information that you need to be convinced. If you're not, leave a comment or a question below. We'll try and get you an answer to it. But Pat, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks for having me.
About both of these products and for making both of them. They have made so many of our lives 1,000 times easier. So
we're fanning over here. We're just
we are. But yeah, so we're gonna link everything below for agents and authors. If you are not a member, how to find out how to be one. And yeah, thanks for having us. Well, thanks for joining us. Really, we had
Yes.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you, Pat.
Bye.
Thank you.
And we'll get